Laura Payne joins me. You backed Donald Trump for president. You previously supported Roy Moore in this race. Can you continue supporting him?
I supported both of the, both Luther Strange and Roy Moore, and I'm having a hard time seeing how I'm going to be able to vote on December 12th for Roy Moore, considering the women's allegations.
Is that because you believe that some or all of these women are telling the truth about Roy Moore?
I feel like there's a lot of credibility to their stories. I looked at the Washington Post article with the 4 women. There seemed to be a lot of patterns there of behavior that they cited, and they didn't know each other, and it was different times over multiple period of years, and that alarmed me. And I saw the woman that Gloria Allred represented on Monday, and she had a very convincing story to say as well. I don't know if they're telling the truth or if they're not. I think we should give them the benefit of the doubt, and because it takes a lot to come forward and tell a story like that. And the fact that they've waited all these years says a lot. It's not something they're proud of. It's not something that they are embarrassed by, and they don't want people to know. But when they see a man that has done this to them, and he's rising to power, and he's going to be in one of the top, most powerful positions in the country, that's alarming for somebody to be a victim and see this man ascend like he has through the ranks of power.
And you, as I mentioned, have quite a record and pedigree in Alabama Republican politics, both as a congressional aide and a political activist, and as I mentioned, the RNC and being a Trump delegate and the Rules Committee and all that. So what do you think of what Alabama Republican leaders are doing about this? Do you think they are taking this seriously enough and giving a true vetting to Roy Moore, given, as you say, some of the credible accusations that have emerged?
I think they are looking at this seriously, and they're considering their options, but there's not a lot they can do. We do have a nominee, and he got the majority of the vote. That's why he's our nominee. And Roy Moore's supporters have been with him for decades, and they're strong, and there's a lot of them, very powerful, loud voices. And it's hard to deny those people, the candidate that they wanted to put forth on the ballot. And other people like myself, I was a Mo Brooks supporter, until we got, the runoff, right, and we voted for the 2 candidates. And so I think the Mo Brooks supporter and the Luther Strange supporters are probably looking at this going, I'm not sure if I can vote for this man, or maybe I can. Maybe these allegations aren't true, and it is political. There's a lot of different thoughts out there. I think
Given the 2 choices, who do you plan to vote for?
I don't know that I can vote for Roy Moore at this point, but I will say I'm not in the majority on that. I think a lot of Republican activists in the state feel like they can vote for Roy Moore because they'd rather vote against the Democratic agenda, and the abortion issue is a big deal among the Republican Party, and that's a big reason that's cited that they will have to stick with Moore, right, if they do vote. So I think
Laura,
a lot of them will, and some
stay
of them
with me, because that's the point you raised. I want to broaden our discussion. I want to bring in Liz Plank, an executive producer of Divided States of Women for Vox, and a reporter who has basically looked at these issues for a long time when you talk about feminism and politics, really. Mm-hmm. Laura's still with us. You heard her. What do you say to her? What do you think of her as a person who's obviously loyal to the Alabama Republican Party, but is breaking ranks with Moore?
Right. I mean, I want to commend Laura on deciding to break with Roy Moore and standing by her morals. But I guess my question is, if you believe the allegations and you believe the women who are accusing Roy Moore, do you believe the women who are accusing Donald Trump? Are we going to have the same standards when it comes to the Senate as we do for the White House? And I think it's particularly damaging for the Republican Party. I mean, what's happening right now and what we saw unfold today, I have to say, was difficult for me to watch. I'm sure for many people it's difficult to watch, see religious leaders and pastors defending a child molester or alleged child molester.
Alleged child molester, yeah.
Is even alleged child molester is really, really problematic and troubling, and that damage cannot be undone. Child abuse is a very complicated, complex kind of trauma, and I have difficulty seeing how the Republican Party can sort of move forward, even if Roy Moore is taken off the ticket. How does the Republican Party survive this?
Well, you mentioned that in the religious part, and that is another guest we have with us from South Carolina. So let me broaden the discussion. This is Pastor Mark Burns as well. He's a Trump surrogate, and he's standing with Moore. Pastor, you heard Liz Plank lay it out. You heard a fellow conservative of yours in the state of Alabama, Laura Payne, saying it is impossible for her to continue to support Roy Moore given what these women allege. Why do you come down so differently?
Well, you know, that's the key word, is allege. Again, I just really believe we're following a slippery slope if we are allowing the media and public opinion to become the judge, juror, and executioner.
Sir, I'm asking you. I'm not asking you about the media. I'm asking you as a pastor. There were pastors who stood up there with Roy Moore. And this is not about the media. So, listen, I'm asking a question. I'm giving you the chance to answer it, Pastor.
You let every one of them speak. You let every one of them speak without cutting them off. You do not have to cut me off.
I'm not cutting you off. I'm focusing the question because you start making it about the media. It's not about the media, sir, Pastor. I'm asking you to answer what your judgment is, sir.
Let me finish.
Go ahead.
Let me finish. Okay. As my judgment, we live in a country that declares you should be innocent until proven guilty, not guilty until proven innocent. That is wrong. My only question is, those allegations should be taken serious. What the women are saying should be taken serious, and it should be investigated. My only concern is when you start hearing people say, well, you know, I don't think I could vote just because somebody alleged. The fact of the matter is there are so many holes in these stories, and there's so many concerns in these stories that we need to begin to question. I think that's why the different religious leaders stood and signed the pro-family leaders letter today because as a pastor, I can't make my decisions based off of what somebody said happened. I have to make some decisions based off of what's actually happened. I am going to guide them regardless. I'm going to love on them regardless. But I'm not going to I'm not going to condemn them without knowing the truth. Jesus said it like this: you without sin cast the first stone. You sin, go sin no more. That's what Jesus said. So the fact that I can't sit up here and say, you know, Moore did it or those women are lying. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, we need to examine, just like we examine Moore's life, we need to examine their life.
So let's do some examining.
Is this a political pawn?
Yep, let's do some examining. Laura, take a listen to Tina Johnson. This is one of the accusers about what she says happened to her.
My mother and me went to his office for me to sign custody papers of my son over to her. And we went in. As soon as we hit the door, he was real flirtatious, coming on the whole time. And we was in there forever, it seems. And then we eventually got up to leave. And as we did, my mother went first. And then when I got up and went out, he grabbed my behind. Just hard. And that's what he done.
Laura, if you would speak to that as some of the testimony here, and also anything you might respond to what the pastor argued.
I would say it's always a he said, she said case in a lot of these situations. There's not a video there. There's not another person in the room. And again, that's another reason why I want to make sure that people consider these women and their accusations. They don't really have anything to gain from coming forward and saying things like this. Their names getting smeared, their lives are being investigated and torn up. I mean, they're trying to find any bit of, you know, anything to discredit them. And it's unfair, I think. It's really unfair the way that these women are attacked when they do come forward. And that's the reason for the silence all these years. They didn't want to go through this. They didn't want to be discredited or not believed. But at the same time, they are allegations, and there are two sides to the story. And I think a lot of the Moore supporters in Alabama, they've been with him for a long time, and they feel like he is, you know, he's a good guy, and he's a godly man. I hear that quote a lot, that he's a godly man. But I go back to my times when I worked for Nick Gingrich on Capitol Hill, and, you know, Denny Hastert was up there, representative, and he rose to power as Speaker of the House. No one knew about when he molested little boys, when he was a coach back at the school, when these little boys were being taught, he molested them. And none of that came out until after he was Speaker. a long time after he was Speaker. And when it did come out, it only came out because there was proof of a money trail. The FBI investigated a money trail, and that's when the news of the boys came, because apparently he was paying one of them off, basically,
there was
to
that
stay
hush
silent.
money, and it was that underlying allegations. Liz, go ahead.
Yeah, and you never know what's out there. And if there hadn't been that money trail, they wouldn't have ever found out. Those men probably would have never come forward.
Right.
So those are concerns that I have when I look at these things.
And it is a he said, she said, except in this case it's a he said, she said, she said, she said, she said, she said, she said. 9 women have now come forward with very similar allegations. They do not know each other. The Washington Post story that outlined two of the women who have allegations had more than 20 sources. And so when you're making a decision, like the pastor is saying that, you know, we don't know what happened, you're choosing to believe one person. You are siding with that person, and you're saying these women are all guilty of lying.
Right, and Pastor, I'll go back to you for your response. I'm going to play for you some of what the other clergy said today, because Roy Moore has invoked the 10 Commandments, he's invoked religion, he has the pastors out there. The point isn't that not everyone gets a chance to speak in politics. The point is, at least some of the folks are basically taking their position and using the pulpit to say that Roy Moore's right and that all the women are wrong or lying or part of some conspiracy. Take a listen today.
Roy Moore has stood firm, and he has never surrendered this nation's core allegiance to the truths that make us free.
The most valiant leader running for office in the United States of America today is Judge Roy Moore.
Facts appear to show us that Roy Moore is being framed.
Pastor, is this the right line, or are we better off being humble about at least what is out there and maybe saying that there are serious allegations that require vetting?
Well, you know, every case is different. We cannot take every case to be the same. I agree with you that there are some cases that need to be vetted. There's some, without question, you need to, any allegation like this need to be taken extremely serious. My concern is, again, how we just immediately found him to be guilty because the allegations without any factual proof are coming up. And now they're coming up 40 years later when there were plenty of opportunities for these women to come out, while Judge Moore being a very public person, having two national situations, one with the gay marriage and one with the 10 Commandments. He drew a lot of national attention. And that was great opportunities for these women to come out, or some of them to begin to come out. It's just because
can I ask you about that? Can I get one question into you about that, and then I'm going to let Liz respond.
I know the power.
We've gone long on time, but this is what I want to ask you, sir.
Because it happened to me.
Sir, but let me ask you this, Pastor.
Looks a lot like what CNN did.
Well, let me ask you this, Pastor. When people say it's not the right time, I never quite understand that, because in law, there are some things that are barred by time, and that's a legal fact. But in an election, I think part of the reason this is coming out now, according to what we've learned from some of these individuals, is they didn't know that this individual was going to make it this far and potentially be in a 6-year term representing the state of Alabama in this high office, the United States Senate. Isn't the issue whether this is true or not the timing of when it came out?
Well, to me, I think if there was a real deep scarred issue in some of these women, just what you just said, I think is alarming, because what you're essentially saying is it's not that they were scarred for life because somebody sexually assaulted them, but because the person that sexually assaulted them or allegedly sexually assaulted them is now about to become a U.S. senator. That's exactly what we're arguing. If he was guilty, then it should have came out because he sexually assaulted them, not because he's about to become a United States senator. That's backwards, and that's my argument. I think that's what the Alabama GOP is standing behind Moore. I think that's why those religious leaders are standing behind Moore. We're over on time, because we see it as a character assassination.
And I got to do equal time. So Laura and then Liz. Laura and then Liz.
Donald Trump.
I'd love
you got
to
to
know.
remember, he was assistant DA at the time of these allegations. It was a small town. He's the big man in town. He's the single guy with the big job. Some of these women may not have, they may have been from broken homes, or maybe they weren't. But he was well respected in town. People don't want to believe somebody they don't know. He had all the power, and he could have done anything. District Attorney's Office, that's what they do. They work with the police, and they prosecute these kind of cases. they didn't feel like they had a voice. That's the whole point. Why speak out then when you know no one's going to listen to you?
And Liz, on that final point, hold on, I've got to go to Liz because we're on the timing. Liz, on that final point that Laura raises, he was a prosecutor and a DA. He allegedly said to one young woman, "No one will believe you." Another young woman telling a reporter, the reason they're speaking now is because nobody asked back in the day, and people are asking now.
And we are calling them women, and they were girls. So this happened to some of the accusers coming out today. It happened to them when they were in their 20s or later in life. But primarily, he was going after teenage girls. And so, again, the intricacies of child abuse. I mean, does the pastor have you counseled anyone who's been a victim of child abuse? Do you know the intricacies of that? Do you know a child who, has experienced that and came forward right away and told all the adults in charge?
You know, we just had a conversation with one of my staff members who went through a very similar situation, and she gave a very vivid, and this is today, one of my staff members today gave a very vivid account of what took place in her life when she was 16 years old as a minor.
So she reported it when she was 16 years old?
She sure did. And guess what? That gentleman lost his job. And I think there were some criminal charges that took place. So the fact of the matter is, each situation is different. You can't put them all in the same box. There are some strong women and strong young women who have come openly way back in the day before any of the accusers decided to run for the U.S. Senate. Now, I understand the importance of some women not coming forward in the beginning. I get that. But I also know that there are millions of strong women that have came out, millions of strong women that have faced their accusers and put their accusers in bars. And this is the case with Judge Moore.
I'm going to extend an invite to continue the discussion because it's an important one. And this is a conversation between a conservative for more, a Trump-supporting Republican who's said that this means she can't support more, and Liz Plank, who's been critical of more. These are conversations I think are worth having. So I thank each of you for being here.